All right, I'm
Hello.
going to get to introducing you now, Sumi, and then I'll introduce Lyle. So we've got two guests today. So, Sumi, you're an elite competitive powerlifter. You hold
Mhm.
state, national, and world records in, I'm going to try not to butcher this, three federations: the USPA, the RPS, and the WRPF.
You got it right. Perfect intro. Yes,
Awesome, awesome, awesome.
thank you.
And
And Lyle knows everything. If there's anything that's off, he'd be able to correct. So yes, you nailed it.
excellent, excellent. You're like ridiculously strong. Um,
Thank you.
like your performance at your most recent meet was nothing short of insanity. Like you hear about powerlifters going 9 for 9 in competition and calling that a good thing. Well, Sumi went 12 for 12, and you might be wondering how that's even possible. Well, as I understand, when you are going for a record on the squat, bench, or deadlift, you get an extra attempt. And she did just that on all three competition lifts. So she went for a record and succeeded on the squat, bench, and deadlift. And your numbers were phenomenal. Like, okay, 112.5 kilo squat, 87.5 kilo bench press,
Mhm.
177.5 kilo deadlift at a body weight of like, I wrote it down.
I think
It's
I
like
weighed in at like 112 or 113 pounds. So I don't know what that is in
50,
kgs.
50-ish and change, 50 kilos
50.8
and change.
kilos. I bragged in the last installment with Lyle that I was good at metric imperial conversions. It was a lie. I got it
I know.
wrong.
Well,
Anyway. Um uh and that's in the masters category, right? So you're
yes.
competitive with the younger folks, like at an age of 47,
Right.
right?
And I'll be 48 in a few
But
days. Yes, that's correct.
just
Oh, well,
for
happy birthday.
clarification,
Thank
just
you.
for people who don't know powerlifting. So there's weight classes, right? They divide it by body weights. And there's the open, which is generally older than juniors. It can include everybody, but there's also masters divisions that start at 40 to 45, 45 to 49, stuff like that. So Sumi, as a 48-year-old lifter, 47-year-old lifter, could technically only compete in masters if she chose to, but she was competitive in the open division at most meets against people over half her age. And when you mention the records that she set, right? So you can take fourth attempts if you are going to set a new state or national or world record, right? Not just a personal record. It has to be beating a current record.
Thank you.
At that final meet, she not only set state and world records in her age group, but she also set the world open deadlift record. So for her weight class, like that is among all competitors, all age divisions. Her next to last pull set the world open record, and I strategically set up her attempts, and then she just lifted more on top of that, to finish off. So
Yeah,
It was a good day. It was a really good day.
that
it was a
was
good.
a perfect meet.
It really was. I mean, it was all
Thanks.
white light.
Thanks for that explanation, Lyle.
Yeah.
Um, I'll continue. Because not only is Sumi so phenomenally strong, um, she also, well, as you can probably tell, maintains a pretty bloody ripped physique, very impressive, all year round. I mean, how could you not, being that strong? And Sumi, you're an author. You've written Mum Strong, and which I've read, and that was excellent. And I've had the privilege of reading a draft of your forthcoming book, which is all about how to cultivate toughness through mental training. Um, and in addition to being strong and brainy, you're a mother and a coach. So evidently you know a thing or two about how to balance the demands of training with everyday life, even the very rigorous training of powerlifting. I think we can all learn a lot from you, Sumi, and I want to thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that very, very kind introduction. I'm very flattered.
My pleasure. I'm going to introduce our second guest, who's, well, he's no stranger to the channel now. Sumi, you owe at least some of your success to your coach, whom we
Of
have the
course.
privilege of being joined by once again, and it's Lyle McDonald.
Howdy.
Now, last time I introduced you, Lyle, as one of the finest minds in the fitness industry, and I don't think anything since my last interview has changed. So, well, anyway, I could sing your praises all day, but I think for the purposes of this interview, I should probably keep things brief. You're an author, a pioneer in the online evidence-based fitness sphere, damn near introducing the entire field to the internet.
Yep.
And you're basically more influential than most people realize or definitely give you credit for. So
Yeah.
thank you for joining me as well, Lyle.
Thanks for having us.
I'm going to kick things off with a question for both of you to do with powerlifting, which is basically, I'd like you to describe, well, I haven't phrased it as a question, but I'd like you to describe the history of Sumi's powerlifting journey from how the two of you met to what are Sumi's greatest achievements. Obviously, we covered some very impressive numbers earlier. I want to talk about the biggest challenges that you've overcome together and sort of where are you at now?
So I'll start with how we met, since that's the easier of all the questions.
Yeah.
So I've been in Austin for almost 15 years now, but I moved from Washington, D.C. And so before I moved here into Austin, I knew Lyle was living here. And of course, I knew him from all his books. I knew that he was in town. So I had reached out to him prior to moving here and saying, hey, I'm a personal trainer and I'll be in Austin, in a month or so. Could you connect me with some people who are, trainers who work at gyms, because I need a job. So I had not met him, but I just knew of him and, through the forums and everything, and reached out to him via email. I said, sure, come on down. And I will introduce you to, he was either training, I think you were training Patty and Amelia, the two girls. No, you weren't. Okay. You were, well, he said
they were ex-trainees of mine who had opened up a private training.
Yeah. So that's how we met. And then of course, when I came to town, he completely forgot that I was here. And I was like, hey, are you gonna introduce me? And he said, what? I totally forgot. So it was very funny, but he made up for it and we connected at that time. So that's how we met. And of course, we've been friends for a very, very, very long time. So, prior to moving here, like over 15 years now. So
Whoa.
yes.
So that's actually an incomplete story. So she told me she was, I put her, connected her with Patty and Amelia, my two ex-lifters who had opened this gym. And then I totally forgot she was showing up. She was actually in the car with Patty and Amelia. They were at the time looking for a facility location, and their phone rings and it's Sumi going, I'm here. When can I meet? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I just I just happened to be in the car with them. So yeah, and is it my turn to talk about
powerlifting? You can take it from there.
It's free.
Well, so I mean, there's more for her to add. So I mean, yeah, I've known her since 2010 when she moved down here, and I'd worked with her informally, over that time period. I think I might have helped you diet down for an early photo shoot.
Yeah, no, well, you helped me, my first book, Mom Strong, he helped film all the videos for that book.
Oh, that's
he took
right.
all the photographs of the book. He did the edits on that book. So he was extremely helpful in that regard. So yes, that's part of it. So we were friends. He was helping me with that. And of course, he helped me get settled into Austin and find work and that. So.
And show her where all the good steakhouses were, predominantly that.
That's, yeah.
The priority is the important stuff.
Oh, I can sniff those out from a mile away.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, yeah, like I said, so we were, friends, colleagues, and I didn't, like I said, never trained her formally, but I knew enough about her biomechanics, such as they were, in terms of, these things. And then I guess it would have been, was it 2017 that you did your first competition?
That's your job to know.
I wasn't coaching
8 years ago.
competition. Don't blame this on me. Yeah, it was 2017. So in 2017, she contacted me. She'd been working with an online coach, and she was doing a meet here in Austin called Queens of Iron, which is an all an all women's meet put on by USPA, which is sort of a new thing in powerlifting because there's finally enough women to do it. And her coach couldn't be here and asked me if I could handle her, and take his attempts and take her through warm-ups and help her get through the meet. And I was happy to do it, although at the time I was actually on crutches. That's when I broke my leg. So I was only able to do a limited amount, basically just watching and helping with attempts and things of that nature. And I don't know if Sumi wants to tell the story of her first ever competition bench press and what happened with that. She got through squats. Do you want to tell that story? You want me to do it?
I mean, it was a meet where I pretty much did a lot of things incorrectly. So, I mean, I've kind of flubbed commands several times.
And I mean that's typical, right? Like unless you work with someone like me who really does that early, you don't know what you don't know. Like don't make it sound like, and she's not alone in that. So she comes out for bench press, and bench press and powerlifting, you have to wait for a start command, a press command, and then a rack command. And she rushed the start command on her first lift. She just wasn't paying attention and hadn't practiced it, and I could see it. She was distraught.
Well, it was less so that I was, I've been training for like 25 years now. And with that, with the handoff, like I wasn't used to having, I've always benched on my own.
Sure.
So there's somebody who's giving you a handoff and I just wasn't used to that. And like, they stand right over you. So I got distracted by all that. It was funny. I learned.
Right. But I still saw that it affected her. And just to show you how supportive a community it is, at least a half dozen people. She's sitting there on the chair just looking destroyed, and they're like, look, I did it too, right? Everybody came out, so we had 10 minutes in between lifts, took her over to the rack. I mean, like I said, I couldn't do it hand off for her, and I had another coach or lifter hand off for her, practice command. She went back, nailed it, second and third, got through deadlift as her first meet. And then for whatever reason, sorry, go ahead.
It's a happy ending.
Yeah, I mean, that was, as much as I could do to get her through the meet and help her, make sure she succeeded. It's very important to me for new lifters. Like, it's not about PRs or records, and that wasn't her goal. Her goal was just to do it. And she talks about that in the book she's working on. And I just want to make sure she finished and complete, because you have to complete at least one lift in each event, squat, bench, deadlift, or you get to, you don't get a total. So she wasn't able to continue working with that online coach. And I said, well, I mean, I've trained people on and off over the years for powerlifting. I love it as a sport. And I'm like, well, let me take over your training. And that sort of, from that point on, for the next 7 years, coming up on 8 years, and she'll talk about that final meet, I handled every bit of her training, every bit of the coaching. Not initially, but eventually, I was in the gym with her 6 days a week, overseeing every single where I coach, very hands-on. It's very difficult for me to give canned programs, especially with a lifter like her. And we'll talk about this, where there's so many things going on, because especially early on, we had to fix her technique. And it's very difficult to do by video, it's very difficult to do well, because you give feedback a day later, right? It's not helpful. So, and we had to really rebuild her technique from scratch, especially on squat and deadlift, less so on bench. But it's still, that is a relentlessly exhausting process, right? There's so much to do. And like I said, we had to do a lot with hers because of her biomechanics and her long femurs. And that's where, having worked with her before, I had a feel for what I thought would probably be effective. And I don't know if we'll talk really about her training or the way I trained her, but it's about the most atypical thing you will ever see in the history of your life. Most people would look at this, it would never occur to them to train anyone like this. It probably wouldn't be necessarily appropriate for anybody but her, although I do use it with the other folks that I work with for a number of reasons. But every week I would give her one thing to work on, one technical bit. And we would work on that, start her very light. I was pushing her on the other stuff, what I call donkey work, all just the generic, boring bodybuilding, general strengthening stuff. And I gave her one thing to work on, and we'd work on that. And then when that was solid, something I learned from my own coach was I developed a good feel for right about the time she thought she was getting it figured out, I would give her something new to suck at and give her something new which is me being facetious, but I give her something like, okay, you've got this bit locked down. Now let's introduce the next piece and the next piece and the next piece to keep her on that high point of the learning curve.
Can I ask, did there ever come a point where there was nothing that Sumi sucked at?
There's one of the things with technique is it can always be better. It can always be, I mean, yes, you reach a point of diminishing returns, right? And this is something just like, if any coaches who are listening to this, one thing I've seen in the industry lately is, again, what people call majoring in the minors, is fixating on these minor details about the first rib angle and this head position, like long before the person can even do a basic squat, right? The big stuff always matters more than the little stuff. So it's like we had to figure out the appropriate stance for her. And we fooled with that every so often. I'd decide, let's try a new stance, and it would not work for her. And I'd be like, I finally just told her, look, if I say, let's change your technique again, just slap me. Because it was me looking for stuff that didn't look, let's just, dance with Hooper on you. We did make one final change right at the very end that is just worth bringing up, and I'll get there. So yeah, and I had to start very, very light, and we'd build up to a peak, and she competed very frequently, like 4 times a year for up until COVID hit. For the first 3 or 4 years, I competed her very, very, very frequently. And a lot of that was just, you have to learn how to compete. And she can talk about what she learned with every competition. I had to learn how to handle her at meets. And I'll be honest, the first 2 meets I took her to, the way I peaked her didn't work. She looked unprepared on the platform. It just didn't work. And that would lead into her 3rd meet that she did with me, where again, I did something that most people would look at and go, that's insane. And I'm like, well, yeah, but it worked. And we never looked back. And again, we can talk about those details. I want to sort of give the overview. So this was a process, in the first year, of course, making beginner gains, which are always great, and hitting, big PRs and things. But every cycle we beat and move it back, like, all right, now the next bit of refinement. And it got to details. And her goal from the get-go was to make it automatic, right? That's, those stages of motor learning. She wanted to be, a robot on the platform, on the sense of, and one thing I don't do frequently in training, I rarely cue before a lift. I'll give feedback afterwards, because the lifter can either be thinking or lifting, not both. And, when you go to powerlifting meets, which if you do, take a book because they're super boring, you will frequently see coaches or handlers or people just shouting cues at the lifter. Heels, get tight, chest up, big breath, right? You can only at most think about one thing.
Yes.
Some lifters can't think about even that. So I never gave her cues in meet other than execute. And that was to run the computer program that we're trying to build in the gym with consistent practice of perfection. That was always the goal. And over the years that developed, and there would be backslides. There was one period in the middle where her squat depth was starting to get questionable. And because of the way she's built, and she's got a little bit of a hip twist, she was getting called on depth, which is arguably one of the hardest bits of powerlifting to get consistent. So we had to back off and go, look, it was a thing I got from Matt Gary, who's a top level powerlifting coach, where she said, look, I mean, some lifters can do it. Some lifters can skirt depth, to the micrometer and make it work. And not everyone can, and she couldn't. It just takes two, even when I competed, I just full squatted. I understood 2 depths all the way down and nothing like that. I could never figure out anything except full. So we went back, we said, we're going to make your depth incontrovertible, because we're going to make it so that no possible judge could even have a question. So that was when we had to back off and work back up. And bench, she was having some elbow issues and losing bar pass. So we played around with some grip width, and that failed, and we went back and just fixed it. And then probably deadlift was where the biggest change occurred, in that I started, like I said, teaching basics, keeping the bar in, Like, and I wanted to teach her, I wanted to train her to be a very conventional deadlifter. And it became rapidly clear that that was not going to work. That her body, just the length, her femur length, her relative strengths, most of her strength is, you know, her back strength is ridiculous. And that actually another funny story I'll come back to. And over time, she just started to adopt this very hip high, round backed. Basically, it was just a stiff legged deadlift off the floor. There was no leg drive. And most people would go, you got to fix that. And I would go, no, I'm not going to mess with it, because unless I want to take 100 kilos off her deadlift, I'm like, that's not what's going to work for her. And and then we went from a static start to a dynamic start, where she would pump her hips and start there to give her a little more pull off the floor. And then we went to one meet and she started rushing, and she walked up to the bar and just yanked at it. And she can, if she wants to tell the story of the longest competition deadlift in the history of the sport. And it was so long.
It was so long
I
that
can put the footage in.
recording.
Oh, it's hilarious. It was so long, people just stopped. Yeah, and this was my final cue to her. I would occasionally give her, like, I would get her hyped up for deadlifts. And I told her, don't stop pulling unless they physically take the bar away from you.
And I took that literally.
And she took that literally. And I mean, it was still moving a little bit. It hit her knees and stalled. And she just, like, 25 seconds later, the crowd just got tired of yelling. I stopped the camera, and finally they made her put it down because it wasn't going to go. And so then we went to a double pump.
It was a heroic effort
to try to get her to stop. And, you know, deadlifts, sometimes crazy stuff happens. It's the nature of that lift. So then we went to a double pump to try to get her to not rush, where she would drop her hips and then pump and go. And then that started pushing the bar out of position. And she started, it was a technical flaw called ramping, where she would hook her knee. So I'm like, all right, we got to go back again and go back to a single pump or whatever. Like, that kept changing. But the whole time, right? So she had this weird, narrow stance, high hipped, round back, like she would just backlift the damn thing. One of the judges one time, I forget his name, Sumi will remember it, came up to us in between events and said, I love your deadlift, because you basically get it to your knee and then unroll like one of those inflatable, she would just get to the knee and like unroll her back to the top. And, you know, but her deadlift was just a freak show of a lift, but it worked for her. And again, I'll talk about why, you know, people are like, they would get all critical about it. I'm like, look.
Well, speaking of freak shows, I mean, early on, it was my first meet when you watched me squat and you were like, your squat is a tragedy. And if you're going to squat like that, you better have the lower back strength of a gorilla, which
she's 5'5". 5'5", and as I joke, her femurs are literally 107% of her total body height. Like her femurs are ridiculously long. And no matter what you do, we had her in an Olympic shoe with a high heel. She was bent over a lot. And I'm like, yeah, I said, you're going to need the low back strength of a gorilla.
No, I started off my first meet, I was high bar squatting in Converse. And so we changed that.
Right.
I'm not sure I know very many people who have been through so many different iterations of improvements and technical changes. And
it's maybe not. Like, normally with someone built like her, you would use more of a sumo squat. But it was a little bit harder on her hips, and it made it harder to hit depth. And her depth was, so she honestly used a fairly narrow stance. You know, we got her as upright as she was ever going to be. But her deadlift was just this freak show but it was her best lift, because she didn't have to go through the sticking point with those long old femurs and her long arms. Like, if she could get it to her knee, she could pull it to the top. And especially her rack pull strength was legendary, because I mean, I trained the hell, but people would look at it and go, and I, in my Facebook group, you probably saw it, I finally was just like, look, this is how she deadlifts. I don't give a shit what you think about it. This works for her. She's never gotten injured. And if you want to be a whiner about it, just leave the group, because it'll save me time kicking you out, right? Like, make no mistake. Would I teach that to anyone? Oh, God, no. But elite competition is not necessarily, it's about getting the weight to the top. And once we were through the basic training, she did so much low back work to protect her low back. We did heavy good mornings, RDLs, trap bar deadlift, rack pull, back extensions, like
with lots of weight, back extensions with a lot of weight. And also I worked lower back endurance all the time. I would wear like a heavy vest to do housework around the house. So that just improved my lower back endurance with that
so,
crazy long pull.
That's cool.
So yeah, so we very much just like, and also Pete, when you look at it, when you look at the amount her numbers went up, because I was very conservative, and I think we're going to talk about that later about like longevity in the sport, like we talked about bodybuilding last time, is, you know, over the span of 8 years, she added, you know, 90 kilos to her best deadlift. But when you math that out, right, it's only, you know, it's 15, 20 kilos a year, right? It's only it's like 5 kilos a month, right? We were never to give stuff time. And she also had 20 years training. Anyway, so after this abomination had come into position, I said, you know what? I should just let you lift with a frog stance, which is a stance where like no more people, right, where you have your heels together with your toes pointed out. And that was a thing back in the day. Olympic lifters have used it. And the disadvantages, I know this isn't a podcast about like powerlifting technique, but it's harder off the floor. But she had drive to begin with, so that was not relevant, right? Like it didn't matter for her because it wasn't like she just kind of yanked, ripped it off the floor with her upper body anyway. But the advantage for her, what was happening with that double pump, is the bar was getting pushed out. And as it came up, and it was getting, because again, she was lifting in excess of triple body weight, the bar was moving her and it was pulling her forward. So she was having to ramp her knees, and that's what she was getting called reds for. And so I joked about this for years. And when I was speed skating, I tried a frog stance start on the ice because just to be an idiot, and actually it kind of worked for me. And it just looked goofy. But I joked about this for years. And so we were coming into the last year, and something happened. Her low back
my lower back was tired from something. I was having a tweak in my lower back or my hip, and I said, I can't do this particular position. Let's just go light today, and let's try the stance.
She'd had a poor Monday deadlift workout. She hadn't hit the numbers because her low back was tired, and I stopped her because it's not worth getting hurt. And then Wednesday light day, she's like, why don't I just try this? We can't go heavy. And she ended up pulling in excess of Monday more easily.
Wow.
Because in that, yes, the frog stance, because like I said, it angles everything out. It makes it harder off the floor. But because it's turned out, right, if your feet are here, right, your shin has to go forwards, which means the bar tends to hook around.
Yes.
When you go frog stance, your shins are more vertical. And it made her bar path more straight up and down, which meant her knees didn't get in the way, which means she stopped ramping it, which means it went up more easily. And I'm like, damn it, I should have done this with you 2 years ago.
If I'm not mistaken, that's how
the next meet, and she had it just came straight up and her hips came through. And I'm like, we should have done this before. And it gave her
a question.
Oh, I just wanted to comment. That's how Lamar Gant deadlifted, right? Sort of conventional frog stance. Was he a kind of inspiration for Sumi in terms of the biomechanics? Not that you have scoliosis, Sumi, but
I had learned who's to pick I think he pulled like 5 times body weight. So how not admire that guy?
And it wasn't so much, I mean, I knew about it, right? I'd known about it. Olympic lifters typically had used it for snatching predominantly because again, that keeping the bar a little bit more vertical helps, especially with the snatch. And then there were guys, U.S. Olympic lifters. Lamar Gant did that to a degree. He also very much round backed it off the floor. Like go watch the one piss poor quality video that's out there. And he gets his hips low and then his hips shoot up and he just backlifts the damn thing. And so he did that. And like that wasn't until year 7. Like I said, I wish I hadn't been joking about it for so long. The only way I could have her do it any differently would be to stand at the top, drop, grab the bar, and just but that wasn't going to work. That takes an insane amount of skill. So that was the final piece of her technique. By that point, her squat was locked in, her bench was locked in, and then but that took 7 years. So her technique was always somewhat evolving until I finally stopped messing with her squats. That was depth. Bench needed the least. We tried a very wide grip at one point, and that didn't work. And then deadlift, we messed with the start. There's a long video on my Facebook group, the evolution of her deadlift. Because we would fix one thing and then eventually another problem would.
Right.
And then we had to go figure out what was causing that and fix that. So yeah, so I mean that was sort of the, you know, the journey from start to finish. And you know, and her training actually didn't change that much once I kind of got an approach that worked for her. Like I said, I don't want to completely like dominate this because she's got stuff to talk about. Like if you want to get into, you know, sort of how I trained her and the things that we did. But like once I'd found after the first couple cycles that were literally nothing but competition work, practice, by which I mean lots of singles, because she doubles on bench press because we can only do so many singles, but she did nothing but singles on squats and deadlift her entire career. Ever. We never did double because the nature of her biomechanics. If I did to do a traditional thing with sets of fives, I would have had to cut the bar weight by 75% because her low back would be fatiguing, right? So it was all quality all the time. I'm a big believer in specificity, quality, like not maximum singles, but heavy. And it went to this idea of not full on Bulgarian and not, but a very similar idea of like, look, I want her to be able to execute consistently with a heavy single. And she's the type of lifter that she loses touch with heavy weights very quickly. And that's an individual thing. Neurologically, if I don't keep her heavy very consistently, if I put her under a heavy bar, she's forgotten how to do it. Things change. So it was nothing but that and then donkey work. That was the first 5 or 6 months. By donkey work, I mean like the bodybuilding stuff, general conditioning. Then we started to bring in assistance work. So heavy good mornings. And that was to get her not only low back strength up, but also to get her used to having a heavy bar on her shoulders. So the confidence thing. And then for deadlifts, it was RDLs, heavy, like for lockout. And then we eventually brought in trap bar deadlift. And that was to, you know, and she did that round back, just like she deadlift. That was to improve her start. And she had, you know, 2 primary squat days, 1 deadlift day, because that was her stronger lift. And then we would do a bunch of way too much heavy work. And she would do heavy triples on the assistance stuff because she would complain about reps. And I'm like, I want it heavy. And then we do donkey. And then, you know, we brought in, as she got stronger, she couldn't go heavy 3 days a week. The squats became 2 heavy days and a chains day to improve her lockout. And then bench became 2 heavy days and a chains day. And then deadlift became a heavy light medium because her deadlift, as it got like anything more than that would just break her. Because I almost did it 1 cycle and I watched it happen. And so and then what I found was that we had predictor lifts, right? I'm like, my goal with every cycle, which is about 11 to 13 weeks of training, was to initially build up the assistance work and the donkey work to small PRs, right? I figured, okay, if I can get her trap bar deadlift 2.5 kilos heavier than the previous cycle, while she's practicing deadlifts, that gives her that much more potential strength. And I found very consistently that as the predictor lifts went up, so would her PRs. And then the consistent heavy singles would sort of teach her body to use that additional strength. And then I peak her out, take her to meet. Except for that final meet, I competed her very conservatively. She actually would lift more in training than she would lift at the meet for a number of reasons. One being she typically trained at a heavier body weight, so she would get used to heavier weights. 2, I'm a big believer in success, build success, right? I would rather her see, you know, 9 for 9 and make her successful lifts. People like, but aren't you leaving weight on the platform? Like, no, because if I push up her gym PRs, then she makes meet PRs. Pretty easy stuff. And it was more to guarantee as much as I could the success in the meet by having her actually do less in the meet than she did in training, which is the opposite of how most people approach it.
Yeah,
Most
I mean,
people, you know,
there are very many
try to hit a. Go ahead.
I said, no, I was going to say there were very many meets that we completed where I was perfectly fine the next day. It was just like, I feel fresh. And meanwhile, you were totally
So
wrecked
cool.
because he
That
would
was
train
that.
so hard in training, push me so hard in training. The meet was easy in comparison. That was the majority of the competitions
The majority. There were a couple of exceptions.
Oh my God.
But because I did, after her first meet, I said, look, you're going to be wrecked for a week. And she's like, no, I'm fine. And honestly, I would joke, and it's true, the easiest week of her training was meat week. That was her deload.
There is no joking with this man, by the way.
It was joking. Like, it was joking, but it was true. Like that's what I got. It was like, look, I'd rather her train 100% and then compete at 95 than compete at 95 and try to go 100+% in the meets. And then, yeah, so she would do more intensity. Like even her final 2 workouts on Monday, Tuesday before the meet would be far heavier than she would be going in the meet. Deadlifts were an exception. That's just, deadlifts are weird. But we would do, and then we would go to the meet and she'd be like, look, I've been doing, 24 heavy squats a week. Meet is easy when there's only one truly heavy lift, right? In each event, right? Relatively. And then we come in Monday and we just start over. There would be no need. There were twice we needed a recovery week for reasons. But by and large, her meets
this was a brilliant way to coach because, this competition is a skill, right? To being able to compete well is a skill. So if I had gone into competition and repeatedly failed or not made my attempts, I would never enjoy competing. But because of the way he trained me, it was at the majority of my competitions, I felt very, very successful. And that's really important to believing that you can do more, whenever the next competition is coming.
And as a good friend of mine, I've known him for years, and he competed. There's a couple other reasons, which is one, when we would go to meet, I would actually frequently, again, I was a freak show, the way I handled her. I would warm her up heavier than what she was going on the platform. Yes. Right. And because we would go to the platform and I would have records and I'd be like, look, you've lifted this weight 187 times already. Yep. You don't have to worry about it. Right. And even maybe even for the third attempt, it would maybe be like, you've lifted this 17 times and you did it 3 times on Monday. It's not like it's not something you've never, and another thing I never did with her, she never knew what was on the bar.
Well, I didn't want to know either, ever. I never want to know. Even in training, I don't want to know. I try not to look at what's on the bar.
Just all I want her to do is just execute and be the robot. I tell her after the fact. We would have to ask the announcer, can you not announce the numbers? Can you not announce this as a record? Because some lifters, and again, don't anyone mishear this. I'm not saying that the way I do it is the only way or the right way to do it. Right. Eons of successful powerlifters have gone to meet and done more in meet than they ever did in training. I'm not saying this is the right way to coach. It's the right way to coach for her. Because and what my friend said, he says a lot of it, when you've got a regular coach and a handler, is trust. Sumi knew, without exception, that I would never put something on the bar that I did not feel with a great degree of certainty she wouldn't make. Now, does that mean she made every lift? No. But she never went a lift going, oh my God, is he going to put, 10% above what I've ever lifted? Well, we'll talk about that final meet. But by and large, there's a trust issue. There's a matter of trusting your coach to make attempts that you feel confident, so you don't go to the platform thinking, have I done this before? Can I do this?
It was not just in competition. Obviously, the majority of our time together is in training. So even in training, and even if he was pushing me super hard in training, I would get on the bar and set up for the squat. And my thought process was, I cannot fail. So even if it's a difficult lift for me, or it's a difficult, it is a difficult squat, especially if I had that saying in my mind that I cannot fail, then I can't.
Right. And I'm very much, success breeds success. I did not like to see missed lifts in training. It happens, right? That's the nature of it. Something would happen on a lift bar, but across the typical 13-week training cycle with however many repetitions she did, if she had I don't think she ever had more than a handful of missed lifts. Like she might miss 5 total repetitions. And my goal with especially the final week of training was 0. I would pick weights that I knew because then you go into the meet going, I'm ready. Like I'm confident. I haven't missed a bunch. Again, I'm not saying this is the only way to do it, but I'm conservative, relatively speaking. And I did early on, people would be like, oh, you're leaving. There's a hard head idea of like, if you went 9 for 9, you didn't go heavy enough, which is a lot of macho bullshit, honestly. And, Matt Gary, again, super coach, has shown very unquestionably that generally speaking, the lifters who win their categories or their events or make more lifts than they miss, right? I would rather see a lifter make 9 for 9 and go 2.5 kilos heavier next time than go 6 for 9 and go to their next meet going, what's going to happen now?
Yeah.
You go
but that's
in.
also one of the questions about longevity is that particular aspect of being super conservative and not going balls to wall like super macho every single time, right? And
right. Well, and there's that too, right? And again, a lot of people will like compete once a year or twice a year. And again, I'm not saying that's wrong. It depends on the situation. And they're like, I got to make a 10 kilo PR on my squat because I'm old. This is my only chance. And maybe it goes and maybe it doesn't. I would rather take her to meet 4 times a year and go, we're just going to go for a 2.5 kilo. You get to the same place. You do it successfully. You make more lifts than not. And most importantly, you don't get hurt. Right? Mm-hmm. When you look back at actually the rate of progress, which was phenomenal, but over 7 years, she never had a major injury. She had, a couple of minor things, most of which occurred outside of the gym anyway.
I want you to tell us about those, Sumi. But anyway, we can let Lyle finish.
We'll talk about her final meet, I think, at the, to talk about how this entire process culminated, because that was the one place where I did things differently than I ever had. Some of which because I had to. And there were times like I would do, like I said, I did nothing normally because she was not a normal lifter. Nothing I did with her, the way I trained her, the way I competed her. So for example, when we competed, she has an insane, like even for heavy singles, maybe 2 minutes under most conditions between reps, where most people would need 10. And what I found was that she cools off very quickly. Because the first time we went to meet, with 10 minutes between reps, she'd literally forget what she was doing and she wouldn't be prepared for it. And I thought about that for months. I took her to this 2 meets and I'm like, what was going on? She looked unprepared. She didn't look confident because I tapered her very typically and I competed her very typically. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Because it was on me, right, at that point. And I thought about it for months going into this meet, Mary Gainesmas, that first year. And that's actually where her career would end up finishing. And I'm like, okay, number one, because at the time, the first half of the cycle was a buildup. And the goal was to build up the donkey work and the assistant stuff. And then she would move into what I call a strength cycle. And that meant that every Saturday for 6 weeks, we would do
squat, bench, deadlift.
We do squat, bench, deadlift. What I would come to find years later, people they're like, oh yeah, and I would read about people doing an SBD workout, and I'm like, what the hell is that? You're like, oh, you do squat, bench, deadlift all on the same day. I'm like, oh, you mean what I've been doing for 3 years? Like, that's just a strength workout. And the goal was she would do 6 singles, generally speaking, in each lift with full commands, because I wanted to make sure that she wasn't thinking about command. She wasn't thinking about having to think about any of that. Under full competition conditions, she'd wear her singlet, which often changed the way things felt. And the goal was to build up to it. So Monday, Tuesday, she would have these monstrously heavy workouts. And then we go to the Saturday strength workout and she would hit PRs. So I'm thinking about this because I would taper her very traditionally. And I'm like, why? Why would I lighten Monday, Tuesday before the meet? If during training she can go hit these monster workouts and go PR the next Saturday, why would I change that? So that's what we did. I just kept her heavy till 5 days before. And you'll hear if you ever talk to other coaches, they'll go, yeah, with lighter lifters, with some people, you actually don't taper them much. I would cut her volume slightly. But the other thing I did was I realized that, okay, she takes about 2 minutes between lifts, maybe 3 on heavy deadlifts and very low. I'm like, okay. And I talked to another coach and he said, well, why didn't you just force her to take longer? And I'm like, well, why would I make my lifter? Why would I try to force my lifter to be something she's not? Why don't I just handle her the way we train? So that meet, between attempts, I would take her back to the warm-up room. And she would do 2 or 3 repetitions in between attempts. Because otherwise she would forget what she was doing. And so she would go take her first attempt. I would say, go back to the warm-up room. I would go put it, and I would go follow her back. And we would every 3 or 4 minutes, I'm like, we would take a rep. And then take a rep frequently that was heavier what she was going to do on the platform. And then I would ever do like a heavy hold to feel the bar. And then she'd go down and do it. And so she would actually end up doing like 10 reps. Most lifters will do the attempt and then go sit around for 10 minutes. I just ran her back there every single time. So nobody does it like me. People finally one meet, some lifter was like, they kept wondering why I'm bringing this small female back into the warm-up room while everyone's warming up for the next flight. They're like, so what's the approach here? And I go, well, she cools off real fast. So I bring her back here and we do a couple of, she would do like a light rep and then a heavy rep and then a heavy hold. And then we go out and do it again. And the only place we didn't really do that was, and it worked. And I never looked back. So for every meet for the next 7 years, I would keep her heavy till the final week. And in between, during the meet, I would run her back to the warm-up room and annoy those lifters by having to work in.
I know you say that nobody else coaches the way you do, at least maybe not in powerlifting, but your approach in some ways seems reminiscent of Ivan Abadjeyev's kind of approach with his Bulgarian Olympic lifters. In some ways, like not with the...
Ish, yes.
Yeah.
In the sense
exposure
of,
to heavy weights, often sort of competing with weights that you're used to handling.
I don't disagree with you in that, yes, he very much did that. The difference was I kept her heavy, right? Like when I mean heavy singles, 85 to 90% for most of the cycle. So not maxing all the time because that breaks people. She did have that lighter day with chains, although it got pretty damn heavy there towards the end. So it was more just like, all right, if we're going to do singles, I need to keep it relatively heavier. So the first 3 weeks of the cycle would be singles at 85. That's pretty light. And again, it gave us a chance to refine technique, get a little bit of detail in there, and then she'd be 90% most of the time. And again, it was 8 singles in a workout and was very distributed. She would do 24 total reps a week of squat. She would do about the same deadlift. We would do 18. She talked me out a couple reps halfway through her career, and we never looked back. I made her do an extra squat. She goes, I'll only do it if I can do 2 less deadlifts today. And I said, all right, fine. And we just
I'm all about doing less.
I was like, that's fine. And at that point, she was strong enough. 6 singles in the deadlift was probably enough. And then bench press, we would do 16 total reps to kind of keep the volume roughly equivalent. And so, yeah, it was similar in that regards. And I competed her often, because that tends to bring lifters to that next level. Although again, Abadjev, and also I did in the sense that I trained her heavier in training, because once you've done it in training, to do it lighter in competition, it's like, well, shit, I've done this before. Yep. Right? That's what with Abadjev, and I'm not saying this is the right way to do it. Abadjev,
you're not a huge fan of Bulgarian, from what I can
once
tell.
You've pulled a world, once you've pulled a record in training, what do you, because somebody got in my face about this very earlier in the career, and I was talking about it, and they were like, well, what's her best triple? I go, I don't know. She never does more than one. And the lifter asked me, said, well, when you go to meet, where do you go from there? I go, it's easy. We go to meet and do the same fucking thing she's been doing for the last 12 weeks. That's it. There is no where do you go from there. I know exactly what she's good for based on her training performance, her assistance exercises. Like Monday, Tuesday before the meet, I had exact goals. I'm like, if she hits this today, I know which. And then Thursday, we'd have a short light meet prep, light, when she was dehydrated. And I go, if I knew exactly, it was a math problem. If she hits this on her meet prep, she'll hit. Like, yeah, there is nothing to go. You just go do it, meet what you've done. Now, again, people need to keep in mind, this is a smaller. She competed actually in the 48 kilo class a couple times and the 52 kilo class. Smaller female who's not lifting the world. Could someone like Ray Williams, who's squatting 1,000, do this? Absolutely not. Would a larger male trainee? Absolutely not. It would destroy them. But for her, given her biomechanics, her neurology, it was the relative intensity I wanted to train her at, right? I could have her do 8 heavy singles 3 times a week. Am I going to have her do 24 heavy singles in one workout? No, that would have killed her. So in that sense, but I'm like, I don't think I've ever heard of anybody, and you'll hear about occasional powerlifters focusing mostly on singles. And it's interesting to me that the trend in recent years has been like, yeah, we keep a little bit of 90% plus work in all the time and then do the volume. And I'm like, I've been doing that since 2001 with my other girls. Anyway, so, but as far as the taking people back to the warm-up room, that may be more of an Olympic lifter thing, because they do tend to lose groove very quickly, but it's a very different sport. I've never heard of another powerlifter doing that, ever. And I'm actually glad, because it meant we weren't fighting over platforms the whole time. But I think I'm the only one I know of that ever has done that, like ever. So So yeah, so that was how I trained her and competed her. It was, 13-week cycles, kept competition work pretty heavy ish.
And those 13-week cycles weren't arbitrary because you compete 4 times a
It,
year, and so you divide
yeah, it
52
had,
by 4,
yeah,
you get
it
13.
exactly. A lot of it, and I'd show it to her. She thought I was being ridiculous. And I would, I had the training year. And thankfully, most of the meets in Texas tend to get announced very early so I could figure it out. And I mean, it varied from 11 to 13 weeks. If we had a longer period, for whatever reason, we might have 16 or 17 weeks, we would do a 4-week, hypertrophy block.
I
And
want to
where I
hear
did, go ahead.
a little bit from the individual who actually had to do these monster workouts. Um, y- I mean, undoubtedly, a lot of people would really struggle to train 5 to 6 days a week because you do 6 days in the sort of more hypertrophy donkey work oriented phases, and would you move down to like 5 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday rest, Saturday rest, like that? Or I see
Never.
Lyle nodding his head.
Before, just so people, the structure of it, when I did a hypertrophy phase, like that 4 to 6 weeks that we had, or frequently longer, I would cut the competition work down by half to maintenance. I would keep it pretty heavy, but cut the volume severely down, and I would bump the hypertrophy volume. So normally, again, it is a lot, but like on a typical squat day, she would do 8 singles in the squat. She would do 3x3 good mornings to 1 heavy top set, 6 deadlifts, 3x3 rack pulls. And then the rest of it was donkey work. Well, 3x3 hack squat later on. And when I say donkey work, it would be like 5 sets of 8 of one exercise, maybe 6 for lower body, 3 times a week. So it wasn't like we were doing massive volumes. And then as we got closer to meet, I would cut that volume and but during a hypertrophy block, she would do like 4 squat singles, 3 deadlifts, 1 set of 3 good mornings, right? Just cut that volume massively. So I could bump the hypertrophy volume up. And again, women can typically handle more. She would still do 6 days a week, predominantly because she had to keep practicing the power lifts or she would forget how to do them. And that's not a joke.
Motor moron is what you used to call me.
Yeah.
What was that? What did Lyle call you?
A motor moron.
A motor moron. I like that. I like that.
She would forget how to do a lift in like 2 days. So
Wow.
that's why I distributed it that way. So yeah, so I would be shifting so we would do that for 4 to 6 weeks, and then we do a little transition block, and I'd cut the donkey work volume down to where I wanted it and start bringing up the comp, and we'd move into a training cycle. So yeah, it was, we had occasionally a shorter cycle. It was only 11 weeks, and I would just adjust where we started and how quickly we pushed. There was one crazy that was last year, 2 years ago, where she did, as it turned out, we had a USPA meet, and then there happened to be a WRPF meet 4 weeks later.
That was
and
last
year.
Was
it?
Was,
and I peaked.
Yes.
And I peaked her twice within like a 5 week. I did basically crazy adjustments, and I took her to a peak, brought her back for 1 week, and then peaked her back up, and then she had a really long time. That was anyway. So that was how we. Sumi, how was surviving these things?
I'm not sure was that your question, Solomon? It's how do I survive?
Well, you've written a damn book about mental toughness, so I imagine that would be a part of it.
Well, I think what he asked was, how was it for you as the person who was having to go? Like for me, it was easy. I just counted to 1 and loaded plates. Like I didn't do shit during the training cycle. All my work was on meet day. What was it for you as the athlete?
For me, I think we need to remember that, prior to even beginning powerlifting, I had been lifting for a very long time. So 47, I've been lifting since my 20s, early 20s.
Yeah.
So that just means I had a very strong base to begin with. This was clearly something I enjoyed doing. Like I was lifting weights before that. So it's also my job, right? I was a personal trainer. I am a personal trainer. I was full-time in a gym. It's what I do. It's in my DNA. I have always loved exercise. It's just like if I was spat out of the womb, wanting to coach and exercise, I was. So having said all that, it means I enjoy training, and I don't think just everybody just does fundamentally. So And I don't need a lot of excitement as far as training goes. Like I can do a very basic, boring program forever. I don't need constant stimulation. I'm not, looking for the new shiny new thing. So that I think is really important because you have to really embrace the process. You have to be willing to work on things that you're bad at and, enjoy that and understand that the reward may take a very, very long time. So you must enjoy kind of the daily grind and just always show up no matter, how you're feeling or what else is it you got going on. Just show up and do what you have to do. And eventually the rewards will come if you just, I think trust the process. So yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I don't need constant stimulation. So that's why this structure of what Lyle had me doing was fine. I enjoyed it. I don't know if
Understood.
I
And one thing I would add to that, and she can talk more about how she approached it mentally. Well, there are two things. Is one, it did take me a couple of years to get her to really focus more on the process than the goal. She did, because again, I get it. She loves being strong. If she fell into a trap early on of like, if I can't hit my best, she wasn't PRing every strength workout. It was sort of, I'm like, look, it's just the nature of the beast. And I had to really impress upon her. And that's also part of the way I compete people is if you start to learn that, okay, if I put in this process, even if things, and it leads to the goal of success, you learn that the goal is just simply an outcome of putting in the work. The other thing that I've always really emphasized is because, like, whatever, misses occur, especially when you're working with max singles. Things happen. I try to minimize them. Or we'd go to meet and something would go wrong. And she can talk about how she addressed that psychologically and how that improved. I told her repeatedly, and I truly believe this, right? You can't control what you can't control. Things happen. Whatever, judges make calls that you don't agree with, but they're the judges and that it is what it is. That as long as she gave 100%, I was happy, right? As long as you don't quit. I said you can't control what the other lifters do. You can't control long pauses on the bench, for example. You can only control what you can control. But as long as she never quit and brought her best, I was happy. Over time, the process leads to the goal. And I'll turn it back to her for how she developed that psychology over. It took a couple years for me to break her spirit.
I think early on I had a very big ego, and like Lyle was saying, I was always looking to succeed, to push him more, and but he was very, he would monitor every single aspect of the workout to make sure that because we were working on some very basic things and refining technique that I was always successful. I mean, I remember I started with just the bar. Like I was just squatting the bar, just benching the bar. Like we were doing the lightest of lightest to really ingrain technique. And, but then the better and better you get at it, the more confident you are that you can do more, like I was saying. So that was definitely something I can credit to him. And I don't quit. I don't have a quit button. For better or worse, I do not have a quit button. I'm a very, very persistent person. And that can lead to, all, there are detriments to that too, because you can persist at something that's that's no longer serving you.
Yeah.
But that's definitely made me successful in being, in powerlifting for so long, because I just don't quit.
Well, I mean, the famous 23-second deadlift is a good example of that. And
I'm sure it was longer than that. I know it was longer than that.
That's when I turned my camera off. And there would be cases in the gym or even like that it clearly wasn't going to go, or she was going to get hurt. Like as much as I push hard, you don't go for heroics in the gym or in training, because that's how you get hurt. Like occasionally in meets, I would have to do some crazy stuff because that's how I had to get her to her goals, just in terms of how I picked attempts and what I did with her. But in training, like if she was in the middle of a deadlift and I knew it wasn't going to go or would get reds, I told her to put it down, because left her on devices, she wouldn't quit. But if it's going to be a bad lift, if it's going to get her hurt, that's again part of my job. It's also part of my job to choose weights that I think she will succeed with 99% out of, again, it does happen. I think since I don't want to take over as the interview, but I think something that might be interesting, Sumi, for you to talk about would be when you started to compete, how did you learn, like stuff would go wrong? You'd get reds, you'd have whatever, you'd miss your third attempt. The nature of powerlifting, you do squats. And what if you finish on a missed attempt? How did you learn to not carry that into bench, not carry that into deadlift?
Part of it
Good
is just,
question.
part of it was really not holding on to that failure. So I had to picture, as an example, you picture whatever just happened as a leaf floating away on this in a stream, or blowing in the wind. Like literally, you had to just picture, okay, it's done. I still have work to do, and just think about what's the next task. That's really all it is, at least for me. We're all trained, I think, to focus on the negative. I think that's a very normal thing. And what I would do afterwards is I would tell myself, okay, you cannot have an emotional reaction right now in the moment, because that's never going to serve you well. I'm not going to throw a tantrum now. I'm just going to do what I came here to do and finish my job. And this is where, keeping something like a training journal is really important, where you can write down, what went well and focus on your wins and what was right. And if something does go wrong, like Lyle was saying, you get reds or whatever, you think about, what can I do to fix it? So rather than focusing on the negative, start to look for solutions. I mean, the majority of our meets, we always learn something, because I don't want to say that something always went wrong, but something always does go wrong. It's just part of competing, right? But we would come back and be like, okay, well, we learned something. We learned that we have to, work on your start. We have to work on, your positioning on bench, whatever it was. And so that's the way to frame it. We're going to fix it, rather than saying, oh man, I suck at bench, or I'm terrible at squatting. Like that's where it can go wrong. So does that answer your question?
Thank you, Sumi.
Okay.
I you, I wanted to ask, because you mentioned earlier that you're a persistent person. You don't give up. You've always loved lifting. Are these psychological traits that people can cultivate, or are they sort of? I mean, no doubt some people have, I guess, innate proclivities toward just working hard at things and enjoying the process. But you talked about how, at first you were goal oriented and you gradually became more process oriented. So, clearly you can cultivate some kind of rearrangement of your psychological traits. How is it that normal people, as it were, can be more like you? Well, we're all normal people, but
I think it's
is,
important, if you're trying to build the skill of persistence, is to really just take the first step. And that looks different for a lot of people. When the first step could be signing up with a coach, for instance, or the first step could be joining a community of like-minded people who are kind of working towards a similar goal. And I mean, there are a lot of things that are really hard and take time, and you have to persist at them for years and years and years. Like, let's say it's weight loss, for instance, and you look at, I have to lose 40 pounds. Can I just take the basic step of aiming for 1 pound a week and something like that? And there are many ways you can go about it. You can start, like I said, I really believe in having a performance journal and writing down, like, where I was successful. If we're talking about weight loss, what I did right, did I meal plan correctly, the things that you did properly to get you to your goal, and then focus on building on. If something went wrong, okay, well, what can I do better next week? And I think these are all little things that are going to build confidence in your ability to do that skill. So it could be any skill, really. And for me, it was powerlifting. I just have to keep showing up and focusing on the basic building blocks over very many years. And so I think that's how I build the persistence of that, if that makes sense.
yeah, totally.
I would add to that
Thank you.
from like a coaching standpoint, because I've seen debates, among coaches of is it possible to develop toughness in a person? Like, this is usually like, combat sport athletes. Like, is it an inherent characteristic, or can it be developed?
Yeah.
And I should have backed up something that I know I told this story in the book. When I first met Sumi, sort of playing with this project, and I gave her sort of this test I was fooling around with, and I got her scores back, and I told her, I said,
This is a personality test, by the way. It's a personality test. Yeah. I don't think you said
that. And I'd say, you would be a perfect athlete, because I saw in her scores that she had the psychological profile to basically what she just talked about, in terms of, she already had a lot of that built in. And now the question then becomes, well, was she born with that? Did she develop that over the 20 years of personal training? And I'm of the mind that the answer to the question is, are you born with it or can it be developed, is yes. I think people are born with different baseline levels of that, just like we're born with different baseline levels of everything. But those early experiences can shape that in either direction, right? Like one of my really early formative experiences is I got into martial arts in high school. And I actually reached out to my instructor a bunch of years ago because he, as much as anybody, as much as my other mentors, is probably responsible for the type of coach that I became because of such an early experience with the way he did things. Right now, you can destroy someone. If you take someone who's new to it, you take a kid and all you give them is horrible experiences where they fail constantly, which I see altogether too much of in all sports. You have just, or at the other extreme, if you're a parent and you force your child to exercise, well, yeah, we'll hear the stories about some athlete, Tiger Woods, who became brilliant. But what we don't hear about is the 99% who hate it because they had to do it and they weren't encouraged and they weren't developed and they weren't coaxed. And if you're coaching someone, and again, I learned this early on, somehow I knew it on some level. I'm like, I wanted to be there. I love training. I love being in the gym like Sumi did, but like I'm not my clients. They may or may not want to be there. And you have to judge that. And when you're general pop personal training, they frequently don't. They had a bad early exercise experience. They're like whatever it is, doesn't matter. And part of my job was to teach them via success, via building self-efficacy, via constant success, that they could do it. Along with learning that, I'm coaching someone brand new and they think that their abilities are much lower than they actually are. Now I could be the typical hard head and go, boom, we're doing 27. I'm going to prove to you that you can do it. And then they never come back. Or during a set, when they think they're done, I go, just try to do a few more. Do a few more. And they go, wow, I did have more than I thought. But it is a process. And it is, and again, Sumi had 20 years. She had a psychology, but she also had a little bit of a, let's be honest, a little bit of a bro attitude.
A little bit.
Her technique on certain things were a little bit shaky because she was more interested in moving heavy weights. And it, like all bros, she tended to be a little sloppier on the muscle she couldn't see, like her back. So, there was frequently a lot of, okay, we're going to have to cut the weight back and make you do it right, which she wasn't happy with until she saw the results. So there's a little bit of both, right? She was coming in, and again, maybe developed over 20 years of dedication to not only training, but also training other people, which gives you a very different experience. But then I had to take her to that next level with the way I coached her by seeing progress, by seeing success, by seeing that if you put in the work over time, even if you're not always on your best, it will show up at the meet. Now, that's pretty much the limits of my approach to sports psychology. It's not my area. It's not my field. My whole thing is I want the person to feel prepared going into meet. That's, to me, that's most of what I do. Now, again, I would have to address as a coach, well, when stuff goes wrong, how to help, the individual work through that, or what are we going to do about it? And I'm, Sumi is not a rah-rah kind of lifter. She is like me as an athlete. She's a, how do I make it better? It was the constant seeking of perfection, which is, like I said, that was part of why, and if I'm honest, there is typically a bit of a gender-based difference here. Typically, men are a little more ego-driven, a little more goal-driven. Women, generally speaking, are a little more, and again, I'm grossly stereotyping, but it's more true than not, tend to be more process-oriented. But frequently, that makes them not as good at competition, right? Men want to just max out every day, and they tend to compete like this. And I read an article years ago, and it was to the effect of train like a woman, compete like a man. Because frequently women don't want to, it's changing now. That's a 20-year-old kind of idea. Like during training, you focus on the process. But when you go to competition, your goal is to murder your competitor. Powerlifting is not really like that just because of the nature of the sport. But if you're talking about, head-to-head sports types of thing. But that is me as a coach, was to develop that. And again, when things go wrong, you have to address why, figure out why. And again, you can sit there and poor pity me, or you can focus on what went wrong, or you can, blame the judges or whatever, and that's not productive. Or you can go, well, how do we fix it? And Sumi was excellent at that. And I wouldn't have allowed it any other way. I'm like, well, we can't just keep going to meet and hoping for the best and hoping for lucky calls. Like, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, no, I remind myself that there's nothing that's going to come out of saying something like, woe is me. The best thing to do is be like, okay, well, what now? What do we do next? How do we fix it? Just keep a solution seeking mindset. I think that helps you with anything, any kind of challenge. It's not just in powerlifting or in the gym. It's anything really.
And
Focusing
it's
on.
all, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, like, even if things went wrong, it just taught me to always look for the silver linings, because there always was, no matter what, like things that you can be grateful for in training. And there was always something that went right. Doesn't matter what it was. There's always something, right?
Well, and that's just it. You focus on what went right, and then you fix what went wrong. Right now, again, my job as a coach, not only through the training. Listen, the training was easy from what I had to do. I counted to one a lot and loaded her plate, so she didn't know. Like, that's literally all I did, and would give her the occasion, especially later in her career. There was so little technical feedback to give. By and large, it was just, she focused on the process, she focused on consistency. I just decided what to put on the bar. But meet day was really where that's when she had to do the least. She had to go lift.
We're a great team. We were great, always a great team on meet day, always. I mean, I think there was a question that Solomon had earlier, which was, what makes you guys such a great team? And
that's right.
And I will say that it's, Lyle thinks about everything, and I think about nothing.
Look at him laughing.
There's zero going on. I mean, it's all about the process for me. He's trained me so much and so consistently and so hard that I just have, like he said earlier on, I just run the computer and just do what I came here to do. There's nothing going on. It's like, what were you thinking? I don't know. Like,
absolutely nothing. She said,
right?
She said, Lyle thinks all the time and I don't think at all. And that's just the perfect. She just did what I told her and trusted. Again, I developed the trust. She trusted me to make the right choices. We would go to meet. And like I said, that was really the time when I had to, if things went wrong, it could be. There are various and sundry things. And it could be, I had to make the right attempt choices. I had to know, and I had to know strategically, like what needed to be done on that day to get her to her goals. That's my responsibility. And again, there are different ways of handling people. Some athletes want to know what's on the bar. They want to have input in her attempts. She wanted none. She was there to lift the thing 9 times or 12 if everything was perfect. That was it. I would tell, and I did everything else. I would run around like a maniac for 6 straight hours, running timing. When do we start warm-ups? When does she wrap? When does she take her pre-lift caffeine? When I would tell her when to potty, because I knew I would time her warm-ups. I knew exactly how long she needed. I would factor in other lifters. One of the hardest meets we ever did was one of the all-women's meets that had 2 bathrooms and one of them broke. So I kid you not, I'm looking at the bathroom line going, all right, there's 10 people in line, assume 2 to 3 minutes per lifter. I'm going to have to get her to potty, give her 23-minute lead time because she's going to be like, I kid you not, this is what I'm doing. I'm running back and forth. I'm watching the board. I'm keeping track to make sure her warm-ups are right on schedule. I've got her attempt sheet, exactly what I want to do. I know where all the records are. There was one meet where we were watching, she was fighting for the total with 1 lifter, a bench record with a 2nd lifter, and deadlift with a 3rd lifter. So I'm watching what they're doing, knowing when to put in attempts and what I need to do. Right. So we'd come out of the meet and she'd be bouncy and fresh. And I just I'm covered in powder. I am wrecked. Also, for me,
a lot of stress on you.
Yeah, and some of it is emotional stress because on that day,
you wanted to go well.
My coach was the same. He was way more stressed on race days than I ever was because on meet day, the only thing I cannot do is lift the actual weights. That's the only I can hand, and that was my goal. Again, other handlers do it differently. Other athletes want different things. She didn't want a lot of rah-rah. She didn't enthusiasm. That wasn't what we did. She was as focused as anyone, and people, she can tell a couple of stories. People will comment on that. But we'd worked together every day in the gym for years. We were just, I could read her mind, and she knew exactly. I would just bark words at her. I would be like, rap.
So going back to that, like most people will say,
go to the platform. We would say like 12 words to one another during any given event.
That's the comment that people would make, be like, you guys maybe say 2 words to each other the entire competition. I said, yep, that's pretty much how it goes.
Yeah, so we would, between events, we would go walk around and chat about what happened or whatever. But like once the event started, it was me just barking. She would just stand there waiting for me to bark commands at her. But I would be so anxious, and it's like, I would stay up the night before. I kid you not. Every meet, I reread the rule book
Yes.
because to make sure that I hadn't forgotten something, to make sure I didn't get anything wrong. I was notorious at the competitors meetings, which is they have a thing before the meet starts. I would ask 5, 6, 7, 8 questions. I was the only one. One meet, the funniest thing, Renee Garganta, who runs RPS here in Austin, he finishes the competitors meeting and he goes, "Any questions, Lyle?" And I'm like, "I got 3." Right? Because I didn't want any surprises. I needed to know exactly when the events were going. Where do you want us to powder? Can we take fourths? What, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was nuts. And I won't deny that, because my job on that day is to put her in position to succeed. She's done hard. How could I not? How could I let her put in 13 weeks of grueling work? And it was at times, especially there's a few weeks in there. My job, and my only job, was to put her in a place to succeed. And if that didn't happen, I mean, it would hit her, but it would almost hit me more.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's far more stress on him that day because
Oh God, yes. Yeah, I would be exhausted.
Very caring coach, and he wants everything to go well, and he wants me to succeed. So,
and the next day she'd be fine. A Sunday, I would just be the entire day just brain dead. I would go home and collapse.
I'm not even sore. I'm totally fine.
Like Monday, she's
there's like two meets that we've done that I think I felt like completely wrecked. The one that we just finished, Mary Gainesmas, and then there was the other one where I had first come down from the 52 kg class to the 48 kg class. So I was, in a really lightweight class for myself. And I remember on meet day, just like things not fitting right because I was so thin, and things just feel different. And so I think I just moved with the weights a little bit differently. And so I was more sore than I would have typically have been. But
like I said, some of that was the way I competed her. Most people go to meet and try to put up big PRs, and that just wrecks you physically when it's something you haven't lifted before. Most meets, she would go and lift well within her capacities, because people would see it. They'd see her final deadlift move and they'd be like, that looked like a warm-up. And I'm like, but that was by design for me, as much as humanly possible. There were exceptions, usually when a record was on the line, and I'd be like, we're going to have to go for it, even with a 4th attempt, which again is for a record thing. If I was going to take a crapshoot lift, that would be it, because that's an extra lift, right? You have to make your 3rd attempt first to even have the option to do it. So like once you've made your 3rd attempt, which is what my real goal was, and I'm like, yeah, on a 4th, that's when I'll take a crapshoot lift that 50-50, but still more often than not, it's like, all right, it's not a guaranteed lift, but I'm not worried, if that made any sense. I'm like, it's within her. And occasionally something would happen, usually on bench if something wasn't going to go. But by and large, so she was always lifting well within her capacity on meet day, which is why she's like, yeah. And again, if you're doing 3 lifts, 3 squats, the first one is a warm up. It was literally less than what she warmed up with. And the second was medium heavy, and the third one was, 5 kilos or 10 kilos below what she'd done in training. It's pretty easy workout. Like,
okay,
really.
That's the Solomon asked a question. We've talked over him the entire time.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Solomon.
It's a good thing. I think I've only asked a total of like 3 questions.
So
we've been here for like.
Let him rip.
Go ahead.
I was so entranced just listening to you that I've almost lost track of which questions I had wanted to ask.
Well, is your audience a lot of powerlifters, or
what was that? Sorry.
The audience on your channel, is it a lot of powerlifters, or?
I wouldn't say so, but usually when people watch videos about Lyle or involving Lyle, or it's got Sumi in the title, it'll pick up an audience of powerlifters, regardless of what my main audience is. But yeah, no doubt there are a lot of powerlifters in my audience, and no one personally. Not to make this autobiography, but I started my channel posting videos about Team Fortress 2, which is a video game I sunk an inordinate amount of time into.
Nerd.
But anyway, shut up, Lyle. You like your talk. Okay. Questions.
Sorry. I'm listening. Go ahead.
So, yeah. One thing I wanted to ask, and I don't know where Lyle went.
I don't know, but that's
Earth to
okay.
Lyle. Well,
Let's talk about you for a bit.
oh yeah. I guess on the topic of video games, I can say, touching on something Lyle mentioned earlier, you can cultivate self-efficacy through successes. And people think of video games as a net bad influence, and there certainly may be truth to that. But there are aspects about them that I think can cultivate good personality traits, in that it's a way that you can see for yourself that if you put effort into things, even if you're not academic or sporty or whatever, that you can reap the rewards of your efforts. You put labor into video games, you see yourself becoming better at them, and that can translate into a positive attitude about other areas in life. I didn't grow up very sporty or, for that matter, well, I had a bad experience that sort of discouraged me from trying in school. A sixth grade teacher accused me of plagiarism, funnily enough. It sort of taught me the wrong lesson. Taught me that the harder I worked at things, the less I would get out of them. But I sort of erased that mentality through, of all things, gaming. I taught myself that if I worked hard at things, I could actually, get good at whatever. And I realized there was nothing really separating me from other sort of muscular folks my age. So I just started lifting in high school and succeeded, and it sort of snowballed from there.
It's a great story.
Thanks.
The lessons from video gaming applied to your lifting and helping you to, I mean, we've seen your physique as well. So obviously you're doing very well for yourself.
Why, thank you. Why, thank you.
I will offer as a counterexample the fact that I played Tetris for years and never got any better.
Right, and that's a very good point. Not everyone does get good at games.
Yeah, I made the mistake. I had a friend who was, and part of it is just because it's such a visual. I don't visualize things that way. It's the same reason I was bad at organic chemistry. I couldn't. That's just not the way my brain visualizes things. And I had a female friend in college, and who was really good at Tetris. And being a typical dumb male, I was like, I could beat you. And even though I knew I sucked at the game, and she's like, okay. And I go, you got to give me time to train for it. So I spent a month playing daily, and I just never got any better. I'm like, I'm gonna get ass whooped in here. And we went and played, and she just destroyed me on the first match. Second match, she screwed up, and I won just by default. And then we decided not to play the tiebreaker. So, yeah, Tetris was one of those games that I just never. Again, I don't have the spatial skills to be good at that game, and yeah. So there, but I agree with your general point. It's like, all right, if you work at something, you will improve to one degree or another. I mean, depending on the game, but it kind of goes to what I was talking about developing, whether it's persistence, whether it's realizing that, okay, look, you mentioned you had that early bad experience, and those early lessons can really make or break people.
Yeah.
One thing, this was last year. Well, I mean, Sumi should probably talk more about, Shiloh, her daughter, and lifting, but she decided she wanted to do a powerlifting meet. And
That's so cute.
Sumi and I kind of tag team coached her. Sumi would coach her during the week, and then I would work with her on Saturdays. And again, same approach, even more important for beginners and for younger lifters, right? If you're just grinding them down to have bad early experience, they're going to quit. And the goal, so I made her set her up for success. She had a great meet, and the lesson that really teaches at an early age. And it's like, there is a toughness component, not to mention the fact that I've told her, I'm like, look, your technique, squatting and deadlifting and benching is better than, I guarantee you, every high school boy at your school. And
definitely. Yeah, her
and it's true. I go, look, I'm like, I typically more trained females, and it's because I thoroughly enjoy training females to have better technique and lift more weight, because we would go to the gym and soon we'd be deadlifting or squatting, and people would just go do something else because they're like, here's this tiny girl slamming, 3 wheels aside, 315, 145 kilos on the deadlift. I'm going to go to the other side of the gym. And that gives me
I don't think Lyle gets enough credit for this. He's so hated by so many people on the internet, but the one thing he truly loves
not as bad as Jason
helping.
Blaho's.
Yeah,
well, one thing that he truly loves is he truly loves helping women. I mean, if there's a person who's willing to work, he will put everything behind it to make them successful. And I mean, he truly, genuinely enjoyed it when we were lifting in a commercial gym and I was out lifting a lot of people. I mean, it brought him a lot of joy. So when
Oh
he
yeah,
says he likes
you have
to
no
train
idea.
women to embarrass the men, he's not joking.
Yeah, I'm not. But we were sort of with what you when we were talking about sort of early experiences, and I mentioned how you introduced Shyla to lifting and how
Mhm.
it wasn't a required thing.
Oh
She
no,
would.
God no! I would never force anybody to do anything like, especially not a child. That's one way to make them hate doing something is to force them
But
into a
but
sport.
but when but when she did decide, and she lifted off and on for years, and she'd be like she'd want to lift for a little while, and then she'd quit, and then when she decided this powerlifting, I mean, it's like I think it is teaching. It's like martial arts did for me. It's like video games did for you. It's like, all right, it is teaching a general skill set and psychological
A
profile of
persistent, a
if I put the work into this, if I
Mhm.
work consistently at it, I will get better at it. And in her case, she went to a meet and I made sure she succeeded. That was very critical, that she went 9 for 9 and got all this. And, she got little kid points because people always cheer, whatever. And that is a skill and a psychological profile that will
Yeah.
serve her later in life as
Well,
a
that's something that's
general.
tying back to what the question that Solomon had earlier about if toughness is something that you're born with or that you can learn. She definitely learned something from this whole process. I mean, I couldn't say if she's born tough. I couldn't tell you that, but she certainly learned something from this experience, and so hopefully that does translate into other things that she decides to pursue later in life.
Mm.
Who knows?
And speaking as someone who was formerly a high school aged male bench pressing in the gym, I can almost confirm that your daughter's technique on the bench would be a lot better than mine would have been.
Yeah,
I mean, oh my God.
yeah, it is fun to watch. It is a bit of a tragedy, but
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
still, I
totally.
still think
I could have done with a Lyle or a Sumi in my life, but I was too headstrong. People had said to me, perhaps Solomon, you should consider getting a trainer, and I thought I knew better than, because when you make newbie gains,
Mhm.
you think you attribute the successes not to basically the rate of adaptation that's inherent to anyone who's new to lifting, but some special feature of the approach you've arrived at. So anyway, um, well, that brings me to the question of Lyle mentioned that when he started working with you in 2017,
Mhm.
he said you were a beginner, which struck me as a curious remark because you had been training, as I understand, for an entire 17 years before, because you've been training 25 years, so you started working with him 20. Yeah, so you had almost 2 decades of lifting experience before you came to Lyle. So why then would he call you a beginner? Ah, well, because I suppose you're a beginner to powerlifting, but that's not how I had thought of it. Had you
Absolutely.
really, I mean, surely you would have had some exposure to squat, bench, deadlift prior to
Yes.
working with Lyle.
Not
Um,
deadlift. I never deadlifted ever. I mean, I did
wow.
RDL. I did RDLs,
Okay.
Romanian deadlifts, right? So that's barbell work, but why would I need to deadlift? I mean, I
Yeah.
just didn't do it. And I would say I bench more like a bro, more like the bodybuilding style. And it's
Yep.
very different to set up for, benching for powerlifting. And I never ever squatted low bar. So it's just completely different from, squatting in Converse and high bar to squatting in Olympic lifting shoes and low bar. It just changes everything. So yeah.
Mm,
And everything felt terrible because like when we adjusted our technique for squat or when we adjusted a technique for bench, just everything felt wrong, right? Because you're setting up very differently for bench. You're setting up with an arch. You're setting up with the, your shoulders locked all the way back, and I never deadlifted again. So I didn't even know how to deadlift. I think I was
mm.
like, oh well, maybe I think I started doing sumo and I almost fell face forward because I'm not built for that position at all.
Yeah.
So, and you couldn't teach me a clean style deadlift because not the way my legs are and the way my torso is. So it
Right.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, so, yeah. I did have to learn everything from the start.
Lyle's muted and he's just talking into the void.
Are you saying something, Lyle?
Yeah,
No, I
he
was
is.
muted. I think I was just agreeing, but yeah, so she was a beginner to not only powerlifting technique, but also that style of training, which is very different than bodybuilding technique. I mean, like I said, I'd worked with her on and off, and even then, like her, and she would do squats of a type, high bar and flats, for reps, and I'm like, yeah, this is just not gonna work.
Not going to work for powerlifting. And I mean,
Especially
I learned how to use a belt. That was another thing. Like I never had a belt for powerlifting. I got a lot out of it, obviously, but you know, learning to use a belt for squatting, you have to learn how to breathe into it. Same thing with deadlifting. Had to learn how to use a belt on deadlifting. So all of these things were extremely beginnerish for me, and I did not mind being a beginner. It was fun.
Yeah. And this is when I've trained people who are sort of new to the sport, even if they had a background, where it's like when we have to rebuild technique, like, yeah, she knew how to work hard on the donkey work, like she'd done that stuff. So it's like, yeah, we're going back to the bar, and it sucks.
And I will say that Lyle is very demanding as a coach. And like in terms of like you said, you know, why were you a beginner? Well, we had to start with 0, and he was, and if it didn't meet, you know, up to his standards, he'd pretty much make you do it again and again and again. It was fine. Again, you do have to learn the process. You really do. Like, can't be the kind of person who goes like, oh, this is hard and I don't get it right away. And of course, it's frustrating. Everybody wants to get it right away, but you know, think about a baby learning how to walk for the first time. They don't just stand up out of the womb and start walking. There's a process. And even if they fall, they stand right back up. They just keep trying and trying and trying. That's kind of what it was for me too. It's to remind myself, like, you can't just learn a big skill in, you know, a short period of time. It's going to take a while. So I had to just embrace that part.
Even more so when you're having to change a technique that's already a little bit established. It takes even longer. Like training a beginner is easy because they've never done it before. They don't have any bad habits to break. And there were many of the more of a squatting than the other stuff that you have to fix, which takes even longer. And, you know, and even when we were doing this, we talked about her technique, she'd learn something and then she would backslide. And even going to this last meet, she would just lose something. She would kind of zone out and lose some part of her technique. And I'm like, look, it'll come back. It's already there. It's in your brain. And whatever, and I would adjust the training and it would come right back, and that was no big deal. So yeah, she's a beginner in that sense, but also she got the newbie gains, right? She got the big single, you know, the big 1RM gains because she hadn't been doing that, and it's awesome because, you know, every strength cycle her squat PR would jump by 20 pounds, and her bench would 9.5 kilos, or her bench would go up 4.5 kilos, and her deadlift would make these monster jumps. And I think that probably leads into another question I know you wanted to ask, which is
I can
exactly where I'm
get into that. So, well, I know, Lyle, you've written about, I mean, we talked about this last time, how the return on investment in sort of taking a serious approach to lifting past the 3 to 5 year mark is so poor as to be, for the purposes of general population at least, almost a waste of time. As in, you put in so much labor and get relatively kind of so little out of it. And when I say relatively, I mean relative to the progress you had made in your first, say, 4 years of proper training. However, you coach Sumi, who, despite having lifted seriously for several decades prior to you beginning your coaching with her, seems to have made considerable progress, at least in powerlifting from year to year. And I know you talked about just then the neural gains, but I mean, I don't know quite how Sumi looked before you started coaching too, but she did seem to make gains in muscular hypertrophy. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. I don't know her as well as you do. Maybe you can also weigh in on that yourself, Sumi. And you know, someone might consider those two phenomena a bit hard to reconcile, like almost as if contradictory, because, well, on the one hand, Lyle, you argue that, you know, it's hard to see these gains past the 3 to 5 year mark, and yet Sumi's so successful despite all of this prior experience with lifting. So would you say it's true that Sumi's success might be evidence that it's not a waste of time to take lifting seriously past the 3 to 5 year mark?
Well, so one of the things I know we talked about last time, it's like it is possible to lift for many years and still be a relatively, you know, a relative beginner in the
Was
sense
that
of,
Sumi though?
well, I don't know. I don't know what her lifting was, you know, prior to me. I know it was a lot of, I think, more body part bro splits. I'll be honest, that her technique
well, I wanted to lift to look good. That was my goal. Was just I wanted to lift to look
good. And you know, so you go from that style of training where it's more, you know, the bodybuilding type stuff. And I pushed her heavy progressively over time. and realize, I mean, if you look back at her first couple of years of competing, her body composition changed. She got gradually a little bit leaner, which also makes a big difference muscular size wise. And
we competed in different weight classes.
Yes, and which also made a difference is, I mean, prior to working with me, I think she said, she typically stayed 112 pounds, right about 50.
I've been extremely weight stable for the majority
And
of.
so, now she's not really that much heavier. I mean, I would train her a little bit heavier. Some of that was just, food bloat and water and glycogen storage. And then we would, she'd have to make weight. She'd have to drop, 2 or 3 kilos in that final week of water weight. So I think there was just some recomposition, a lot of it just as a function of doing a different style of training and training heavily. And I'll be honest, I went back, we cleaned up her technique on a lot of stuff. I think a lot of it was also, finding a lot of exercises that worked well for her. And you and I should do a whole separate thing about, my not uncommon, but certainly contradictory approach to exercise selection, because I had her stop doing a lot of stuff she'd done before that she was simply going to be shit at, as far as building muscle and actually doing things that might get her results. As far as the strength stuff, I mean, if you look, like I said, she was new to 1RM work. She was new to heavy training. She was new to these new technical things. And yeah, she made progress for 7 years, but with a couple of caveats. Powerlifting is unique in that sense, right? It's one thing, we know that there's just an upper muscular limit.
Yep.
Physiologically, you're just not going to get past. But when you're talking about low rep strength, so much of it can be technique. So much of it can be, better knee sleeves, right? That was something else we played around with for quite some time, finding tighter knee sleeves. Like, you can get gains where you may not actually be functionally stronger in a muscular sense, but you are moving more weight in a performance sense, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And then if you look at her progress, and one of these days I should go back and probably accumulate her results. She made really, in the first 2 or 3 years, rapid gains. Then things started to slow. And then there was about a 2-year span where she really stalled, where I really started to wonder, this is about like year 5 or 6, where I'm like, maybe this is as far as I can take you. And she'd been mired at a 225 squat in competition for a year at least, having this deadlift technical issue where like 365, which is 160 something, 162.5, something like that. Like, that was her albatross. I couldn't get her there in competition. Either the numbers, we had the 23-second rep. She got called for ramping for a year. I couldn't get her there. It was really aggravating to me because she would say it was her fault. And I'm like, I'm doing something wrong and I don't know what it is. So she kind of stalled. And then I think where she made the next big jump is she actually started trending down in body weight. And I said, you know what? Let's bring her into the 48s. And we got her into the 48 kilo class without really losing any strength.
I mean, I lost my mind.
I mean, yeah, she lost because it's really.
I want to talk about that, but yeah, go
talk about
on.
The lean thing. Then I know she needs to wrap up. We'll finish with that, and then I'll finish with her.
Yeah, y'all are standing in the way of my happy hour and dinner.
Yeah, so
I'm sorry.
we brought her body down, and then frequently in powerlifting, one of the only way to get your numbers back up is to get your body weight up. And I told her for years, I'm like, we need to take you to the 165-pound class. We need to take you into the 75s. I was joking, but so
I thought you never joked.
Exactly.
That I was joking.
Exactly.
So she trended down to the 48s, really kept her strength. And then when we got her back up, that's when she saw the next big, really improvement in her. And again, that was when we had to change her squat depth. And she was stronger out of a deeper squat because she was able to load her sleeves better and she would get better sproing and better. So that helped. With her bench did kind of stall there at the end. It was a grinder to get much gains on that. And then her deadlift, the big jump there at the end was the frog stance. It was actually changing her technique. So she hit a plateau at about 5 years.
Yeah.
Then we brought her body weight down. Then we brought her body weight back up, and that started her. But to your point, ignoring the muscle mass thing, realize she was putting in 13 grinding weeks of work.
Yeah.
To make a 2.5 kilo jump on each lift.
Under your
is the
supervision, no less, because people
right.
can work hard and just run
Sure.
themselves into the ground without
Is
the right
that
approach.
return on investment for the average person to put in 13 weeks of training? You know, when they're used to, I thought I was supposed to add 2.5 kilos a week because that's what starting strength says. Like, no, you're going to work for 12 to 13 weeks to
Actually,
add
3 times a week.
Yeah, to add 1%, right? And I realize 2.5 kilos does sound like not very much, but again, on a 120 kilo squat, what is that? 2%, 1% over 13 weeks. Is that worth it? And we talked about this with the hypertrophy thing, and then we'll move on to the leanest thing of, yeah, are you ever truly at an absolute limit? Well, maybe not. But do you want to scrape for a year to gain an extra kilo of muscle that won't even be apparent? For Gen Pop, no, absolutely not. For an elite competitor who still feels like they have a little more to accomplish, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And that will lead into,
not like I was putting on a ton of poundage on every single lift across the whole cycle.
it was in a tremendous amount
Stalled
of
a
work.
lot on squat, stalled a lot on bench. I mean, deadlift went well. I probably did the best on that one, but there are, you know, some lifts which you can't get good on all of them all of the time, at least not as far as.
And powerlifting is also very unique in that sense, in that no lifter other than maybe Ed Cohn is built perfectly for all 3 lifts.
No.
Right. The nature of the sport is that, you know, her long arm should have made her bench a lot worse, but she's very upper body muscularly dominant because her legs are so long. So
which
her
lets you kind of compensate for poor biomechanics.
Right. So her squats were always good. I mean, she got a lot further than, but she would always get very frustrated. Lifters in her weight class, because at 52 are usually like, you know, tiny. We had to try a warm-up rack the right height because everybody was short. They would crush her squat by 20 to 40 kilos without fail. She'd be like third in the rotation. She'd be one of the lightest lifters in terms of the weight she was lifting in squats. And then in bench and deadlift, because again, she deadlifts with her upper body. It's basically just a stiff-legged deadlift, and she just backlifts the damn thing up. So she could compensate for that with her bench, and then compensate that especially. She would make up, then she would usually match their bench or be a little bit stronger, and then she would crush them on the deadlift because she had freak show deadlift, because she's got long arms and an upper body strength from hell. So in powerlifting, so it was like we saw differences in where each lift, to get her past that 225 squat in competition took a really long time, especially when we changed her depth. Bench, she just started to hit an upper limit. When you're that light, it makes a big difference. And then her deadlift proportionally kept progressing. But a lot of that was that she is a meat deadlifter. At meat, she could make 10 kilos on the deadlift more than she made in, because the adrenaline, like,
so there's just some magic that happens on meat day with deadlifts.
Magic happens on deadlift. So
and I think the legs are closer in. I don't know what.
You know, she hit a plateau at 5 years. She stalled. We brought her down, then we brought her up, made a couple technique changes, and that's when we decided that it was time for her to be done. But before we talk about that, to finish up, talk about the body composition thing. I know you wanted to ask about the leanness, and I'll try to be quick.
Yeah.
Oh, the leanness about it.
You're like ripped, Sumi. You know, as in you're several weeks out of a physique show, basically, like all the time, right? Wouldn't you say, Lyle?
I don't. Well, Lyle seems to be in person, so he can say, because I mean, I tend to post photographs like very close to. I do it like right before weighing in, and so right before weighing, I'm super dry and super dehydrated. So yes, all those muscles are popping, but the muscles are there. Yes.
Yeah.
So
like super duper impressive.
Thank you.
And well, so you know, Lyle is as you would know well, Sumi, he's the author of the women's book, which is a book in which he outlines the numerous pitfalls in staying, you know, too lean as a woman, which he roughly defines as sub 20% body fat, which undoubtedly is a bracket that you would fall into, right? You would be sort of mid-teens.
Yes, but
not even like, you know, not even right before a competition where you would perhaps get arguably even lower. I wonder, did you face any issues in terms of remaining this lean, or do you currently face any issues?
Yes, so that's a good question. Let me first back it up a bit. So in terms of being lean or naturally lean, like I I'm very fortunate to have been I've been weight stable forever, like
Right.
pretty much have weighed the same thing. Like I think the in my adult life, the one time I might have gained weight is obviously when I was pregnant.
Yeah.
But I swear, like if I kept the photographs from back then, like even when I was 7, 8 months pregnant, you can see lines. I was that person. You could see lines of obliques still. I mean, I was still very lean
That's cool.
even then.
Yeah.
So just saying that it's genetics. I mean, I tend not to hold a lot of fat there, and so that I'm very fortunate in that regard. And for the majority of my training career, I have been able to be, like just a normal woman. I can maintain, a cycle and still be very lean. But especially towards the end, I'm 47 now, and things happen as you age. As you approach perimenopause and menopause, like your body can only handle so much strain and stress. So it's but I've always been this weight, and it's not hard because this is just what I've been. It doesn't take effort, and I think that if it did, and if it was like, I think being in the 105s, if we were going to do it that much more persistently high, 105 pounds, that would be very hard for me. But because I'm pretty weight stable, and we would train at a heavier weight. Like if I was to compete at 114 pounds, I would allow myself to train 5 or 6 pounds heavier, because any more than that, I'd have a very hard time making the water weight cut.
Right. Was that the sole consideration in not getting heavier than, say, 120 pounds? So
at some point, at least for me, my body would just fight putting on additional weight. Like as it is, I'm sitting here this long talking to you is like killing me. Like I am just a natural.
I'm really that awful.
Yes, no, yes,
I'm joking.
yes, you are. No, I'm a natural born fidgeter. I'm the kind of person, if you were just to feed me more, I'd find a way to burn it off. It sounds stupid, but
no.
Well, and to the question you asked a little bit before, would I have loved to have brought her up to the 124s, the next weight class up, the 56s? Yeah, probably. But she was at the point that it wasn't going to be muscle. Realistically, even with the muscle I helped her get, she was not going to be able to gain another 4 kilos. And there was no point in this sport. She would have been less competitive if we just put on a bunch of body fat. So realistically,
it'd be a lot of effort, as much effort as being in the 105s.
Wow. Okay.
Weight class.
And I don't know if she would have made it. I mean, as far as the body fat thing, she probably held 15-16% year round. And she would, I mean, obviously, and even when she did a photo shoot, which she did last year, it was a good 8-week diet, and she still wasn't contest lean. We did it very gradually so it wouldn't crush her performance. But as far as the health stuff that I talk about, the big thing with her is she never really dieted she always, trust me, she loves to eat. And her step count is staggering. It's like 20,000 steps. So her food intake was always sufficient relative to her activity. She was never having to really hold her calories down, except right at the very end. To do that, also women's biological systems get either more robust or more broken, depending on how you look at it, as they get older, right? So for a 22-year-old lifter to stay that lean is a very different situation in terms of menstrual cycle stuff. And as far as keeping her that lean, the reality was that in the lower weight classes, you've got to maximize your muscle mass to have any chance of being competitive in that level. And it was just a funny story, and then we'll wrap up with the final meet. That kind of should wrap this up. We did a meet that there's a bodybuilding show. They would have expos. And what happened, the bodybuilders kept wandering over to our area to use the equipment to pump up, and they had to keep getting shoot off. So the meet is over.
That's so funny.
Do you know about the Solomon? Like, you know about we have these big fitness expos here, and they have multiple events going on, including bikini, physique, bodybuilding, and
they'll have strongman, kettlebells, arm wrestling,
everything. So powerlifting, you have the warm-up area where there's a ton of weights, obviously. So he's saying that some of the competitors from bodybuilding,
Oh,
you can take
over.
And the truly hilarious bit is separately, the bodybuilders are over there looking very sad and hungry, eating their tilapia and broccoli, and the powerlifters are eating, breakfast tacos cookies between events. And I'm like, I know who. Anyway, so after the meet, Bobby Morgan, the fantastic director of USPA, comes over and he goes, hey, I got to tell you something, which means usually I'm like, am I in trouble again? Because I'm usually in trouble. And he goes, no. When Sumi was warming up, because she's so ripped, somebody came over and was like, there's another bodybuilder in the warm-up area. Can you kick them out? It's like, no, she's actually one of the competitors.
Wow.
That was
I'm
great,
just
but we thought we were in trouble.
So
hysterical. Just the thought
yeah,
of
it
these
really was.
oiled up, tanned guys in their
And
underwear,
people
just like
would always
shoot,
come over
shoot.
and be like, oh my God, your arms look so good, because she would be so upper body lean. But again,
Yeah.
you have to do that in lower weight classes to be competitive. So anyway, to wrap all this up, because I know she's losing her mind, this all culminated in December of
You
last
guys
year.
can keep on talking.
Well, but I want you to be here in case you have any comments. I'll keep this quick. We went to Mary Gainesmith's. We decided it's a meet she'd done a number of times, put on the great guys at RPS. We decided, look, this is probably it. She was having some health stuff that we didn't have time to get into, with some thyroid and some circulation, some blood pressure. And it's like, it's probably,
sorry to hear that.
you've come as far as you can probably realistically, I can bring you without, it's time to focus on other things. So we went to this meet, and it was the perfect meet to end on. You mentioned this at the start, and this kind of wraps this up, is she had the opportunity to set fairly readily 9 age group records in terms of state, world record in each of the, state and in squat, bench, and deadlift, or 6, whatever it was. I forget the numbers are. Oh, and she was going to be able to set the state open record. And there was this one outside shot, which was the open world deadlift record, that I looked at the numbers and I'm like, maybe. I go, it's not going to be an easy lift, but deadlifts are where it happens. And in contrast to every other meet where I have always kept it very conservative, whenever I drew up attempt sheets, I'd be like, first, every attempt there was a conservative and aggressive attempt, and a conservative and aggressive attempt. And on deadlifts, there was usually a conservative attempt, an aggressive attempt, and a holy shit attempt. Especially, and I knew exactly what I needed her. And my goal was always make sure she gets what she needs to hit on a third. Make sure she gets the record I want to hit, because then we can go for it. And so on squats, she made her first 3 perfectly. With, as far as we know, all whites. They were giving thumbs up, thumbs down. So more very gladiatorial, I'm assuming. And she made her third lift, and I was like, okay, I like the way this is moving. I know what she's got. Let's go for it. So she'd only hit 250 pounds, whatever that was in the gym, but I knew she had more. So I took her to 248. I'd never pushed her that closer to her best squat. And it wasn't fast, but it went. So started with 4 for 4, setting all the records, that was an all-time meet best. That's how you start. Went to bench.
And I didn't believe it after that. After we wrapped up and did a little wrap up post squat, I didn't believe it when he showed me the number.
You never believe. We do. She starts her snacking, and I go, by the way, this is what you hit. She's like,
Wow.
no way. Yeah, no way.
Okay, I'm lying. So then we went to bench, same thing. We got her third attempt, got the record that I wanted her to hit. And bench is difficult because you're limited to 2.5 kilo jumps, and I won't get into all those details. And I'm like, well, we've got a 4th, so fuck it, let's go. And I put the next weight on there, and it was actually heavier than something she'd missed in training.
Whoa.
Yes, and that's very unusual for Lyle. Like, unless
I never do that unless there's no other option, because the nature of bench is you got to take 2.5 kilo jumps. That was the next jump.
Do you use micro plates in training? I think you do, right?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we
good.
do. But in competition, you can only take 2.5 kilo jumps. I mean, whatever. There's chipping. I'm not going to get into it. So I'm like, well, this is what we got. So hopefully she'll get a good press command. And it slowed, but she's got grind for days, and it went up. So I'm like, okay, 4 for 4. She now not only set an all-time bench record by 11 pounds, 5 kilos, but more than she'd even ever made in training. And that's a first. So now we're 8 for 8. All whites, set of records. Then we go to deadlifts, and I go, okay, I'm going to get creative.
Time for drama.
Get creative with the attempts.
Did you say trauma or drama, Sumi?
Drama, not
drama.
Yes, trauma.
I saw stall in the middle, like, so again, as part of the execution, she got to the point that if the bar was out of groove, her body knew what to do. And her body just goes, throw it back. And it gets into groove, and her freakish triceps would lock it out. And then we go to deadlifts, and I'm like, all right, first is easy. Second is the easy record. And I go, okay, third attempt, this is a weight she's never lifted before. The most she'd ever done in training was 375 pounds.
And it was a grinder.
Not an easy, and that's 170 kilos. It's the most she'd ever done in training.
Holy.
And generally speaking, I don't take her above that in meet, or rarely. And I'm like, but the world open record was 172 point, was that right? No, 170 is 175. So it's 385 pounds. The thing is that to take the record, you have to beat that. So I had to take her half a kilo over. So I jumped her above the world open record by half a kilo. And it wasn't fast, but it went. And then we had a fourth attempt. So I was like, fuck it. I thought initially about taking much more, but I'm like, nope, let's take 177.5. That was 391.3 pounds. 16 pounds more than she'd ever lifted in meet. And Sumi, do you want to tell the story of that lift and then we'll be done?
I mean, I think with each of the fourth attempts, you could not have put like 1 more gram on the bar. I could not. I literally get everything on every fourth attempt thus far.
After her fourth bench, someone in the crowd yelled. After the fourth bench, someone in the crowd yelled, "Good attempt selection," because another half kilo would not have gone. It was the absolute maximum. She left nothing on the platform. So she comes to that final deadlift.
So leaving nothing on the platform is not really that was very unique for Lyle. Like he doesn't do that. Like he doesn't really go balls to the wall because he is conservative. But
it was her last meet, and I knew it was there. And after she made the record on that third attempt deadlift, I put it in, and I'm like, I wasn't 100% it would go, but I wasn't worried based on how the third one lived, because I knew that, look, I mean, she'd done a rack pull with a trivial 184 5 days out just for a heavy single. And I'm like, if she gets to her knee, she'll lock it out. Like, I was never worried. So it stayed in position. She ripped it off the floor. It got to the knee, and it was slow. And I'm just screaming. I
felt like time down.
Right. And it just does. But you just keep pulling. You don't quit. As long as it's moving a little bit, you keep pulling.
Yeah.
The crowd is like standing up out of their seat. The head judge, like they're all like going up, up, and she's just like grind. I'm screaming.
It was a very special moment. Put it that way.
And it made lock out, and she got down, and it had gone. And truly, we went up. She got her bearings, and we went up to the upstairs, and I said, "You just made that." And she just went,
"No way. There's no way."
You just pulled.
It was such a big jump over anything I had done in training, and over his even his most aggressive attempts on any fourth that we've ever done. That was super aggressive.
Yeah. It was super. I've never done.
I definitely felt it. That was where I felt it the next day, and I felt it the day after that. Like,
yes, this was the first meet where I had to give her an easy week because she was broken. The only time, one of 2 times it ever happened, because she had hit all-time bests in all 3 lifts, setting with all perfect, all whites as far as we know. Their light system wasn't down. And for a final meet, she brought her best. She was prepared. I made the right attempt selection. Warm-ups were perfect. The final 2 training weeks were absolutely perfect. Like, you couldn't pick a higher point to finish. And now she's training like a body.
It was a perfect meet. I mean, truly a unicorn, a unicorn in the competition world to have gone 12 for 12 and all white light. So it was very
like
special.
you said, 9 for 9 is the goal. 27 white lights, which she's gotten before. That means all 3 whites on all 9 lifts, is even better. To have the opportunity to take 3 fourth attempts, 1 on each lift, and make them all perfectly with PR weights far and above beyond what you've ever done in meet, and 1 above what you've done in training. Truly, there's nowhere to go from there.
And that's also a testament to his amazing coaching.
So. That's also a testament to her mindset and what she loves to give me credit. And I guided the process, but I didn't pull that 391-pound deadlift. She was the one who actually did it on the platform. And I maybe put her in
the position to do it.
I put her in the position to succeed. And then all of her mental training, all of the work she'd put in, the focus, the mindset, She just went out and did her job 12 times in a row perfectly. And that was the goal all along.
Yay. Thank you, Lyle. Thank you.
Yep. Well, thank you. I told her repeatedly what my coach told me this. I mean, it was an honor to coach her. And I don't say that about most people. So I don't coach most people. Most people, I tend to choose my athletes. I knew going in what she would bring to the platform. All I could do was just help her through the process from the coaching standpoint, and she did the mental work. And truly the process paid off in a way that it won't, most people could only dream of.
Truly. Truly.
And that's it.
Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seriously, it was a pleasure.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
very interesting hearing your approaches to the sport, your history together, just that incredible last meet. The admiration you each have for each other is so palpable.
Oh.
Well, this just is one final story, just because it is funny as far as the team thing, because there is a trust between the athlete and coach. And a lifter came up. Sumi can actually probably tell this story better than I can. I think it was at Gainesmith. The one lifter came up and said she was.
It's been several meets where there have been several meets where people have commented on what a great team we are, and
But one actually came up and said, because it's seen as, like I said, work together. I know exactly what she does. She knows exactly what to expect from me. And she said, I wish I had that with my coach.
Yeah. Yes.
That,
and I was like, too bad, bitch. Ha.
So it's just an outcome of our communication, of having spent 7 years every day in the gym, to know each other inside and out.
If I won the lottery, I'd fly Lyle over,
Yeah. Take him.
Yeah,
Do I not know what I'm getting myself in for, Sumi?
Yeah. All right, cool. Well,
Cool.
I think that's it. I know Sumi has to go start her Saturday.
My goodness. Sitting here for 2 hours, I'm getting hungry, people. The heck?
Yeah, that's unusual for her. You're honored that she was able to do that. So let's let her go, and then we can chat.
I mean, you guys can stay on and keep on chatting if you need to keep on chatting.
Well, do we need to do any of this? Strictly. Oh, yeah, just me being a bit autistic about the use of the word need. Don't worry. It's just an obscure joke.
Not a need, it's a want.
Sorry.
I'm lost.
All right, Sumi, you should go eat, and we'll let you go.
Are you guys gonna stay on and keep on chatting? Because that's cool if you do.
I want to. Don't know about you.
Awesome. All right, guys.
But maybe off camera.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Sumi.
Thank
you were
Solomon.
great.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Just good luck in future endeavors.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. I'll need it more than she will.
Yeah.
And that's a wrap.
Cool.
Thank you, Lyle.
Yeah, absolutely.